Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. In our last 5 lectures, we have gone through different case examples of application of quantitative research methods, where we have seen the authors, they have tried different methods for their work, for their study, and then finally they could able to publish their work in reputed journal. Now, as we already discussed earlier, that it is not mandatory to have always the quantitative research in planning and architecture. Equally, we can also do some excellent work by applying the qualitative approach. The qualitative research method that we have discussed initially, very brief. Now today we will be discussing it again in detail. We will try to understand its application, its advantages and also the limitation. Like the way we have done for the quantitative research approaches. So, for this particular qualitative research methods, also we will go through some of the case studies in our subsequent lectures. So, without any further delay, let us start today's lecture, lecture number 45, titled Qualitative Research Approach. What we are going to learn from this lecture? Definitely we will try to understand what exactly the qualitative research approach means, its advantages, its limitation, and also the application of this qualitative research in planning and architecture domain. Now, coming to the introduction of this qualitative research. So, it is an exploratory approach that aims to understand the phenomena in depth by examining the complexity and nuances of human experiences, behavior and interactions. So, compared to qualitative research, when we discussed about the quantitative research methods, there we are much more focusing on quantitative numerical data. But in this particular case, where we give value to the human perceptions, human experience, the life experience, and by interacting with them we try to get the qualitative aspect of those kind of phenomena. So, that is why it is say that it is to understand the phenomena in depth by examining the complexities and nuances of human experiences, which sometimes may not be that easy to capture through a quantitative research approach, right, where you may do something great with certain information, but as long as it is related to some sort of behavior, or maybe it is something like to deal with the human experience, human perception. So, all the time you will not get the desired outcome, or you will fail to capture the desired quality of information or phenomena only through the quantitative research method, and that is why it is very important to also look into the qualitative research approach in such cases. Qualitative research plays crucial role in various fields including psychology, sociology, anthropology, education, healthcare, planning, design and business. So, if I just try to summarize this particular point where it can be applied in all the areas that we have talked about during our discussion with the quantitative research approach, because the domain are same. Now, it is the approach whether we go with standalone qualitative data or standalone quantitative data or mixed method, that is researchers our choice, and depending on the need we will take a call on that. Qualitative research provides researcher with valuable insight into the subjective perspective, its meaning, and also the interpretations that individual attach to their experience. say if I just want to understand the satisfaction of tourists, okay, who are just coming back from a uh, huge event, or maybe it is something like from a tourist hill station they are coming back, and I would like to understand their perception, how much they like the atmosphere and other part. So in those cases definitely they are going to give us some sort of answer based on their experience, what they experienced in recent past. So that is something you cannot really quantify. So there we need that qualitative aspect, and it is essential for addressing complex social issues, informing policy decisions, and also enhancing the quality of interventions and services. Because some of them, like again I am taking one example of pedestrian environment. So one thing is very clear, if we go to a particular road and we see the footpath is not okay, there is not enough width, the tiles are broken, we can assess. This is something where you can say that okay, this is not 2 meter or this is not 5 meter, whatever the prescription or whatever the standard that we have in different guideline. Based on that we can say whether it is low, whether it is higher, whether it is not adequate. So in all such cases this is can be quantified. But see, if I just want to understand that the pedestrian sense of safety, that how safe they feel, so that feeling cannot be captured through some quantitative quantification, right? So for such cases, like definitely we have to interact, and then with different means we have to take out that information, how safe that environment for the pedestrian or not. Moving ahead, we discussed different characteristics of qualitative research. Yes, again it is a question of subjectivity versus objectivity. Qualitative research acknowledges and embraces the subjectivity of human experience while striving for objectivity in data analysis and interpretation. So whenever we go with the standalone qualitative approach, subjectivity is there because it's all based on certain perception, certain experience. It may not be like very much quantifiable, okay, or we cannot take a call on that. So for that, like compared to a quantitative research approach, qualitative approach will have increase the subjectivity into that whole research, but that is sometimes also required, because unless otherwise we go for investigating those information, the quality of environment or quality of service, so then probably will not really get the enough insight to bring some conclusion or make certain kind of strategy for improvement. The second characteristics is related to the in-depth exploration. Yes, the qualitative research provides that platform. It delves deeply into understanding the intricacies of social phenomena, and often it is uncovering the underlying meaning of it. So that is why it is important. Flexible research design, qualitative research designs are adaptable and allow researcher to modify their approach based on emerging insight, and you can changing the research context. So there are certain flexibility, how you ask the question, whether you go for a focus group discussion, whether you go for some sort of one-to-one interaction as a mode of collecting the information, it is having that kind of flexibility. Rich data collection technique, qualitative data collection methods like interview, observation, document analysis, there are plenty available which yield the rich and contextualized data. Now coming to the type of qualitative research that we have discussed earlier, again this will be some recap. So ethnography, this is very important and one of the very popular methods in this qualitative research approach. In this case, researcher observe and interact with participant in their everyday setting to gain an in-depth understanding of their culture, behavior and social interaction. Suppose if an event is going on and you want to just understand how people react to that environment, or whatever may be the factors that are affecting the user in those kind of event or maybe in the crowd. So you should involve into that activity. You should take part as participant and you just mix with the participant over there and observe. So by observing, by interacting, you will get enough idea about their culture, behavior and social interaction. The next one is the phenomenology. So in this case, researcher aims to understand the essence of a phenomena as it is experienced by participants, focusing on subjective perceptions, feelings and the meanings attached to their experience. So this is something, something happened, people are not happy, people are unhappy, or maybe it is people are scared out of certain event. So why? So in such cases, maybe somebody has experienced something which actually triggered that fearness in his or her mind. So like that, when you interact, when you take out that information by interacting, so you can get that why all of a sudden this place is okay, is feeling like safe, this place is not feeling safe, this is very unsafe, etc. Another popular approach is the grounded theory. Researcher collect and analyze data systematically to identify the pattern, categories and theme, which are then used to develop theoretical explanation of the model. So this is something, you just start with certain idea and then try to develop certain sort of theoretical model. You just collate information based on past data, based on other documents, and finally you can fix it up with the grounded theory. Case study research is also very popular in this qualitative research approach. The researcher gathered detailed information about different cases through various data collection methods such as interviews, observation, document analysis to gain insight into specific phenomena and context. Say, suppose you want to understand the historical importance of a building facade, or maybe you just try to measure the changes in that building facade from like history to the modern age architecture. In such cases, definitely some of the visual quality, that okay, this is like maybe following some sort of rhythm, there may be some kind of other architectural attribute that you would like to look for all these building. So in such cases, you can take up some of the cases and then under a framework you just try to assess and then try to correlate. Another type is narrative inquiry, where researchers explore the structure, the content and the meaning of narratives to uncover the themes, patterns, that okay, there is some sort of commonalities or something which is totally dissimilar, insights about the identity, culture and social relationship. Action research is also very common, where researchers working closely with the stakeholder to identify and address practical problems or issues with a specific context, where the goal is to generate actionable knowledge. Based on that, something will be implemented, some strategy will be taken which will make certain sort of improvement. So for that, this actionable knowledge and promote positive change through iterative cycle of reflection, action and evaluation. So if you just recall our discussion on particular action research, so in such cases we have also discussed this, that where we just develop certain idea, then we just take the action and then we evaluate, and then again we look into whether that the action taken by the decision maker is fulfilling the purpose or not. Again that loop will continue. Qualitative content analysis is another way by which the qualitative content can be analyzed. So qualitative content analysis involves the systematic analysis of textual data. It can be visual data or it may be audio visual data to identify the theme, pattern and the meanings, where the researcher use coding technique to categorize and interpret the data allowing for a deeper understanding of the content and the context of the material. So, this is something where you must have noticed nowadays that something called what cloud. So, what exactly it is? Like say you go through a text, or maybe you just take one interview. There are a series of questions, and out of that you will find that the person whose interview you have just recorded is focusing on certain aspect, and it is coming again and again in the whole discussion. So, that means out of that text there are certain software, there are certain algorithm by which you can convert the speech to text, and then you can identify the frequency of the keywords that is reoccurring each and every time whenever you ask certain questions. So, that means if somebody is uttering a particular word and trying to emphasize on that, so that means it has certain higher priority, or it has certain sort of issues that need to be solved. So, for that we can go for some kind of formation of word cloud, where based on the frequency of the reoccurrence of word, the size of the word will be determined. So, you will see some words, if say for example like public space. So, in the context of outdoor environment, so public space, it may be like sidewalk, it may be safety. So, you will find that okay, there are various kind of keyword that are the output of the interview or the survey, and then finally you can able to make this. So, there are different kind of text encoding, or maybe there are other few software like NVivo and all that can be used. Step in conducting qualitative research, it is almost same that of quantitative research, where the first stage is to formulate the research questions based on the research gap that you identify through literature review, clearly define the problem and create the develop the hypothesis to be investigated. Next comes the research design part, designing the study, determine the research design, the variables and the methods that you are going to adopt. Data collection, gather data using appropriate instrument or the technique. In this case definitely you can go with simple observation survey through photography, videography, or it may be just a checklist that as a researcher or observer you can note it down, or it may also have some interaction. So, in different way, directly, indirectly, you can get involved into the activity, and where you can get the insight of the participants. Data analysis, in this case analyze the data using statistical method to draw conclusion. So, in this case also different frequency that you can do. Obviously, in some cases you will not apply certain kind of statistical tool that we used in quantitative research, but again in this case you can make those kind of descriptive study, right. We can also make certain sort of narrative and content analysis, and finally you draw conclusion and interpret the findings and discuss their implication. As because the subjectivity is more in this qualitative research, the chances of having the bias as researcher end, as participant end, at the overall interpretation range. So, there are certain sort of high risk of having some biased result, because it all depends on interpretation. It is not as simple as 2 plus 2 equals to 4, because somebody just mentions certain thing against certain questions, and probably the respondent tried to convey something, the interviewer understood in a different way, and then finally reporting is done in a different way. So, challenges are there, and that is why it all depends on the researcher experience and researcher's ability how to interpret. Philosophical underpinnings, that is also very much required in terms of research design. In qualitative research, in this case the researcher identify the philosophical assumptions that underline the research, such as interpretism, constructivism and phenomenology. So that kind of openness should be there to understand that what the participant is trying to convey, the experience that they are sharing. Research approach, definitely in this case the common approach includes the ethnography, grounded theory, case study, document study, phenomenology that we have already discussed. The research method, in this case definitely you can go ahead with the interview, it can be a focus group discussion, it can be observation survey like through some checklist or maybe through videography, photography and document analysis. So sometimes based on secondary information also you can do certain research. Sampling strategy, in this case like you can consider the factors such as diversity, representativeness and accessibility of the participants, which much more are leading to the purposive sampling or convenience sampling. But this is again we need to understand that representativeness is something very important. Now it's question that if you again like the relevance of this particular sampling strategy can play a crucial role, that you want to understand the historical significance of some old buildings in a city. Now if there are total 5,000 such buildings, then how many buildings you will take? So it all depends on that the representativeness. If all 5,000 buildings are constructed at the same time in the past, they are having similar kind of analogy and the overall layout, so then probably you don't need to go for a higher sample. But if they are constructed in different year spectrum and then also their layouts are not same, so then from each of those cluster you have to take one or two. So it all depends on those kind of aspect to select the actual sample that is required. Data collection instrument, in this case definitely develop data collection instruments such as interview guides, observation protocols or document analysis framework. Data analysis technique, in this case it can be thematic analysis, content analysis, narrative analysis. Now it has the reflexivity and you can say the positionality, reflect the researcher's own biases, assumptions and also the positionality, that what is my call. As because there are subjectivity, I keep on telling this, I also told few minutes back. So it will depend largely on the researcher how they interpret. So if at all we are going to apply the qualitative research, so we have to be something like open ended, and then we should not make certain biases in that. Ethical considerations, in this case definitely we have to identify the ethical issues relevant to the research, such as informed consent that we need to take whenever you are taking someone's view. So first you need to get the consent. Then also the confidentiality, that the data that you collect is confidential, only you use and you should not disclose it, and you should not defame anyone by saying that he or she is saying this which is correct or which is not correct. And also the potential harm to the participants, so that you need to take care, not only the participants as human, even for some study if you involve certain animal, then also you have to take certain ethical approval. Data collection in qualitative research, in this case interview, one-to-one interview can be adopted, focus group discussion where it is a gathering that you can make all the expert, or maybe you say the like just decide that they are the stakeholders and then you can interact. It can be through observation, document analysis and also survey and questionnaire, where you bring certain sort of questions which are qualitative in nature and you are just trying to get the perception, their satisfaction, etc., which are not like really a quantifiable aspect, like there are quality involved into it. So for all such methods we have discussed in detail in respective lecture of different type of survey technique. Now sampling technique, in this case again I am not going to discuss each of them, but I just mention it again. that purposive sampling, where like we go for some sort of convenience, and then okay, for some sort of people that I know that they can solve the purpose. Maximum variation sampling, where we capture like all possible variations. So, it may be the, you can say that you want to understand a phenomena across different age groups. So, each age group, say below 18, 18 to 40 or above 40. So, each age group should have certain kind of number. So, there you can do. Snowball sampling is already I have described there. So, where you just involve and the participant, and then you take the interview and then you pass on, you ask that participant to further depute or maybe can take part to spread this particular question to another people, like that it can through a chain system it can lead to a desired sample very quickly. Convenience sampling is wherever, like within a distance, within a proximity that you can do, and quota sampling is also the same. So, I request all of you, if these are the terms that it is not very clear from this slide, just go through the respective presentation of sampling technique. So, we have discussed both probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling separately in our earlier module. So, there you can get the insight with examples. Coming to the data analysis in qualitative research. So, again it is similar to the quantitative one. So, first you have to go for data cleaning and preparation. So, this is very important. If there is some erroneous data and all, which may tamper the data, which may lead to some wrong conclusion. Descriptive statistics also, you can use all those kind of basic information. Then you can also use some kind of inferential statistics of that data. And then it is also important to check the validity and reliability, as because there are subjectivity. So, yes, there is some sort of expertise that is required in this case. So, maybe sometimes we can go back to the expert once again when we arrive to certain findings, and then to check that whether it is meaningful or not, again we can go back and forth. So, that is very important aspect. So, validity and reliability check that you need to do. Now, coming to the advantage of qualitative research, it has the richness, it allows in-depth exploration of complex phenomena, because we are including the subjectivity and quality of data here. Researcher can uncover rich and nuanced insight. Contextual understanding, in this case understanding phenomena within their natural context. Researcher explores social, cultural and environmental factors, which undoubtedly is required for a good research. Flexibility and adaptability, researcher can modify the approaches, because there are different methods available based on whatever is required, then one can take it up. Participant perspective captures subjective meanings, interpretation and experiences, provides valuable insight into diverse viewpoints. So, in this case definitely we can able to capture the perception of the participant. This qualitative research approach is exploratory in nature and well suited for exploratory inquiries and hypothesis generation, where new idea, new theory that we are looking to develop. Open-ended questioning and inductive reasoning is the key of this particular qualitative research. Holistic understanding that this qualitative research provides, undoubtedly it facilitates a holistic understanding of the phenomena. Individual, interpersonal, organizational and social factor can be taken up to see the different in the findings and effects. Theory development, it contributes to the theory development. It refines concept, identifies different patterns, and also it advances the knowledge that we have. Along with advantages, there are certain limitations. Obviously, subjectivity is one, where findings may be influenced by researcher biases, the perspectives and the interpretation in all these stages. Lack of objectivity can raise questions about credibility and reliability, but if you can do it in a very systematic way and then in a proper methodology, so that can also be a good work and no less than a work done with the quantitative research approach. Coming to the generalizability, so qualitative research typically involves small and non-random sample. It can be random as well, but generally it is small sample. Findings may not be generalized to broader population as because it can be done with a small sample. Time and resources, qualitative research can be time consuming and resource intensive because whenever you go for an interview session and all, it will take time. Limited scalability compared to the quantitative methods because it's very much contextual, it's very much contextual. Scope and depth may not provide comprehensive and exhaustive coverage of a topic because some portion you must need some quantification. So, that is something, even that is applicable for quantification as well, like something that you need to assess in a qualitative way. Limited scope overlook certain aspect or perspective of phenomena. It's all depend on how you design the research. Coming to reliability and reproducibility, findings may be difficult to replicate because of the subjectivity in nature. It depends on individual researcher skill and interpretation. So, that is why whether your findings will be reproduced or something, that it is not very sure. Bias and validity, it is definitely having some sort of susceptible to the various form of biases. Ensuring the validity and rigor requires methodological rigor and reflexibility. So, that depends on the ability of the researcher and thorough understanding of the approach that he or she is applying. Ethical consideration, ethical dilemmas may arise in qualitative research, ethical challenges may impact the conduct and outcomes. So, that is another challenge. People many a times because of this ethical issue they just do not go for it, but that is also not correct. Interpretation and subjectivity, interpretation of qualitative data is inherently very much subjective. Transparency and reflexivity are essential for addressing the potential biases and how to overcome those biases. So, proper assumptions and limitations that has to be clearly stated. Now, towards end of this presentation, so let us also discuss the application of qualitative research. It is pretty same that we discussed because it is all about the approach. Application can take place in any of the domain like infrastructure planning, transportation planning, tourism. It can be like cultural heritage management, it can be the user experience design, it can be some historic preservation, it can be some behavior or even in the cognitive science area. So, definitely there are many applications. So, depending on your need and all, we need to just find out that whether the qualitative approach will be appropriate for us or not. So, with that I summarize this particular lecture that we discussed about qualitative research approach, its different characteristics. We discussed in detail about different stages, available approaches like ethnography, phenomenography, then you have some sort of grounded theory, etc. We discussed the advantages and limitations of qualitative research where subjectivity is much more in highlight than the objectivity, and there are chances of biases, but again that can be overcome or that can be reduced by successful application or implementation of the methods by the researcher. We also discussed about different areas where it can apply, but these are all some general idea. As we have done for the quantitative research approach, we have discussed certain case studies. So, now also we will discuss another 5 case studies where I will show you authors how they have used the qualitative research approach to conduct their research and finally could able to come out with some meaningful findings and then published in some of the reputed journals. So, we will take one by one in next 5 lectures and we will try to see that how authors successfully applied the qualitative research approach in their research. So, these are some of the reading that I suggest you to go through. So, our next lecture 46 will be on qualitative research case study 1. So, I will be discussing a case study, and thank you for joining this course and hope to see you soon.